So far we have seen how we can access the element of an array using subscripting operator. Okay. Now in order to print all the elements of an array, if I want you to print the entire array on the screen, we have seen we can do something like this. Okay. So what we did is we wrote cout, then name of the array of 0, name of the array of 1, then f array of 2, f array of 3, so on till f array of 8, because there are 9 elements in this array and the last element will have 8 as its index. Okay, now this method is little bit tedious. Okay, imagine an array where we have, let's say, 100 elements. Okay, right now we have 9 elements in an array. Let's say we have another array and in that array we have 100 elements. Then in that case we'll need to write the cout statement 100 times, which is not a good practice, right? And you can't really write it. Let's say you have 1000 elements, then what you will do? So obviously writing multiple cout statements like this is not a good solution. It's not a considerable solution at all. So we need to replace this logic. It is not logic at all, but we need to replace these number of lines with something cleaner, something simpler, and the solution here is use of loops. Okay, so basically in this video what we are going to do or what we are going to learn is how we can print an array using a loop. Okay, see, that loop can be any loop. We can use for loop, while loop, or do while loop. Usually with arrays we use for loop. Okay, for loop syntax is cleaner for the arrays, or it looks better for the arrays. So usually programmers use for loop when they use arrays. Okay, but always remember there is one important thing about arrays. Whenever you use arrays, or whenever we will use arrays in our programming, you will definitely use loops with them or conditional statements with them. This is a very common recipe that we have in programming: arrays, loops, and conditional statements. Okay, they gel very good together. So whenever we are going to use arrays, loops and conditional statements are always going to come into picture. Okay, that's why we are learning arrays topic after learning loops and conditional statements. Okay, so yeah, let's clean this up. Okay, and the solution is very simple. See, this part is very similar in all the statements. Okay, this part is very similar in all the statements. What is changing? Only these numbers are changing. In first cout it is 0, in second cout it is 1, in third cout it is 2, in last cout it is 8. Okay, so what we can just do is we can write a for loop with, let's say, variable as I with value 0, which is initialized with 0, and this I will go till 8. Okay, which is the last index of an array, and in every iteration we will increment I by 1. That's why I'm writing I plus plus. Okay, and that's it. And in this, let me take this cout statement over here inside this for loop, and over here instead of writing f array of 0, I'll write f array of I. Okay, so in first iteration of the loop I will be 0, in second iteration of the loop I will be 1, and so on. In last iteration of the loop I will be 8. Okay, so in this way all the values of an array will be printed on the screen. Now once this loop finishes, what we can do is we can just print endl, or we can show end line on the screen so that you know what end line does. Okay, now let's compile and execute this code. Let's see whether this works properly or not. So let me compile this code. Let's execute this. You can see it is printing all the elements of an array, and you can see the code now looks very clean and very neat. Okay, so in this way, with the help of a for loop, you can print all the elements of an array, or I'll not say print, I'll say you can access all the elements of an array with the help of this for loop. Okay, let me remove this line, like it is not needed right now. Or let's say you're changing value of an element over here, you're changing value of element with index 3 over here, and then after changing the value, if you want to see all the elements of an array, then you can just repeat this code once again. Okay, over here. And now if I compile and execute this code, you can see it is printing array 2 times. Okay, but you can see in second time this 4.5 has got changed to 10.5. So in this way you can see that the element is getting changed. I hope you are clear with how we can access all the elements of an array using a loop. Okay, so now there is one important thing over here. Let's say if I add one extra element over here, let's say if I add 10.1 over here, then what changes you will need to do in your code? See, whenever I'm adding any element over here, and if I don't do any changes, then what is going to happen? Let me clear the terminal. Let's compile and execute this code. You can see the array is getting printed, but it is getting printed only till this element. Only this part of the array is getting printed. The last element that I recently added is not getting printed, or it is not getting accessed. Now what is the reason? See, the reason is this condition. See, in this condition, what we are saying I should go only till 8. Okay, but in this case I have added one element. Okay, I have added one extra element. So ideally, whenever I add any element to the array, I should also update this condition. Okay, that's why it is very important whenever you are making any changes in your initializer list, you need to make sure that you also update the for loops conditions. Okay, but then this becomes a tedious job, right? Like every time I'm adding elements to the initializer list, or I'm removing the elements from the initializer list, I need to update the conditions of the for loop manually. Let's say in your code these for loops are written, let's say 5 times. Okay, then you need to make sure that in all the 5 for loops you are updating the condition, right? And this is a tedious job. Maybe sometimes programmer can forget somewhere, like sometimes programmer may change the condition in 4 for loops, but he might forget to change the condition in 5th for loop. This might happen, and this can lead into human errors, right? So in order to avoid this, what we can do is we have one cool concept, not concept actually, but we have one cool mathematical formula that we can use in order to calculate number of element of an array programmatically. So how we can do it? See, for that we are going to use one operator called as size of operator. We already know this operator, so we are going to use that operator. Let me show you what happens if I do size of ARR. In this case, name of my array is f array. So let's see what happens if I print size of f array. Let me comment this for loop for now. I'll clear the terminal. Let me compile and execute the code. You can see it is printing 40. Okay, now why this is printing 40? Because we have 10 elements. Each element is of type float. Float takes 4 bytes. So 4 into 10 becomes 40. That's why size of f array is coming as 40. Okay, so basically when you do size of an array, it will give you size in bytes. Okay, byte size of an array will be given using size of operator. Okay, now if you want to calculate how many number of elements are present in the array, what you can simply do is, see, we know size of the entire array, it is 40 bytes. Okay, and in order to know how many elements are present in the array, what we can simply do is, we know what is type of the array. See, or what is type of individual element of an array? It is float. Okay, so let's see what is size of float. See, let's see. Let me compile and execute it once again. You can see size of float is coming as 4. Okay, size of array is 40, size of float is 4. Okay, now if we divide these two numbers, if we divide size of array with size of float, then the magic is going to happen. Basically, we are going to get number of elements in the array. You can see we are getting 10 as the answer. Why we are getting number of elements? Because see, size of array is printing size of array in byte, which is 40. Size of float is printing size of float in byte, which is 4. So 40 divided by 4 becomes 10. Okay, one element is taking 4 byte of size. All the elements are taking 40 byte of size. So if you want to calculate how many elements are there, you will divide 40 by 4 and you will get number of elements. That's the simple formula basically. So now what we can do is, let's create one variable. Let's say float, not float actually, integer variable, because the number of elements is always going to be an integer value. So I'll say size of FARR. Or f array. So this is my variable. Okay, so size of f array will have this value. Okay, in this case it will be 10. And now what we can do is, in our for loop condition, instead of using I less than equal to 8, what we can do is we can use I less than equal to size of an array. Now here's one important thing. See, size of an array in this case, it is going to be 10. Okay, but the last element is going to have index as 9. Okay, so over here, if you are writing less than or equal to, you will need to write size of an f array minus 1. Okay, I hope you understood it. See, size is 10, okay, but the last index is 9. So if you are writing less than equal to, then you will need to write size minus 1. Otherwise, you can also write it like this: I less than size of f array. So this is also fine. Okay, so you can either write I less than equal to size of f array minus 1, or you can write I less than size of f array, and that's it. Now if I compile and execute the code, let's see what happens. You can see the entire array is getting printed on the screen, and now you can do whatever you want with this array. Let's say if you delete some elements from the array, let's clear the terminal, let's compile and execute this code once again. You can see only first three elements are getting printed. We are not getting any issue because in this case nothing is hard coded. Okay, we are not hard coding anything. Programmer can do any changes that he wants in the initializer list, and those changes will automatically reflected in the condition of the for loop. So in this way you can calculate size of an array programmatically, not size, I'll say number of elements which are present in the array. In this way you can calculate them programmatically. So I hope you understood all the things that we covered in this video. We basically saw how we can print the array, or how we can print all the elements, not just print, how we can access all the elements of an array using a for loop or using any loop. You can use any loop literally. See, instead of for loop, let's say if you want to use while loop, then what you have to do is you just need to adopt the while loop syntax. So in while loop you will need to write this initialization over here, the condition will be over here, and this increment statement will be over here. That's it, and this is how you can write the code with while loop. Okay, but yeah, you can immediately say that the code with for loop looks much better than the code with while loop. That's why it is better to use for loop whenever you want to access the arrays. Okay, you can see in both the cases we are getting the same output, but for loop syntax looks cleaner than the while loop syntax. So that's why I prefer writing for loop or using for loop for arrays. Not just me, all the programmers prefer using for loop. So yeah, that's it for this video.